Matrix's Call Dialogue, widening your horizons.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Gowri.
And Grace here.
Of course. Sorry, we have a fourth
Just give us a second.
DJ here. And we are listening to ASEAN, and we have a guest all the way from Chile. And from Chile means that we are going to talk about Latin Americans' politics.
And he actually came here at 7:45 this morning. I am so
Gowri.
impressed. You must be really excited about the interview today.
So, hi, Felipe Álvarez.
Yeah, perfect. Perfect.
Why you have a non-Latin American accent? I was imagining that Spanish accent.
I think well,
Or
this is
Portuguese
because I lived a little while in Australia, and also because of watching movies and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't have like a very Latino accent, I know. Yeah. But my name is very Latino. When I speak Spanish, like my Spanish is very Chilean as well.
Buenos dias.
Buenos dias.
Okay, today we are going to talk about political rights and the Latin Americans' experience, because you are actually advocating the political awareness and political rights, especially among young people. So, what is it like working in Smart Citizens Foundation and having all these different roles?
Okay. Basically, I'm a software developer. Okay, like a techie guy. This is a very weird thing, but it's gonna sound very interesting after a while.
Okay,
right?
no, yes.
The thing is that I work for an NGO that has to do with bringing power from the powerful to the powerless, through the use of technology, and So basically, what we do has to do with transparency and accountability in the government, and like trying to work out a little bit the corruption issues that we have in Latin America.
But you say you're a techie guy, but you say here that you are craftsman, activist, cyclist.
Yeah. But
a lot of things to do.
That sounds a lot like. But my work because I consider my profession as a craftsmanship. All right, not like an engineering sort of thing. Like I can consider myself more a craftsman.
So what exactly is Smart Citizen Foundation as a whole? Is it like a Chilean organization, or is it a foundation that you've started, or is it something that it has chapters all over the world? Because I think in the Latin American pronunciation is Ciudadano, Inteligente. Am I correct?
It's almost perfect. It's Ciudadano Inteligente. Yeah, it's an NGO based in Santiago, Chile, and we have mainly doing some work just in Chile, okay. But we have also lately been doing work with other countries like Argentina, Paraguay as well. Producing basically software that helps their people to find out more about their politicians and about what their policies are, what the laws are, who's your MP, for example, write to your MP, like create public messages to your MP, or what are the laws are currently being discussed in Congress.
So you are somehow creating just providing this platform or awareness for young people to somehow understand their political environment better? Would that be the case?
I think that is one thing, and the other one is to make them more engaged into political work. I mean,
have young people not engaged much? I mean, from your experience.
I think people is more and more engaged politically now. And they are more and more politically aware now than they used to be back in 10 years ago or something. Like, if I remember when I was a teenager back in the 1990s, there was this...
Wait, you were a teenager in 1990?
Yeah, I'm 30.
1999?
No, 1999, yeah, probably. But there was this...
How old are you again? Just
okay,
kidding.
no worries, I'm 30.
Okay.
I'm kind of between young and old. In between, I guess. All right. So there was this generation of people in Chile that would call themselves the I don't care generation,
It was mainly during the 80s and 90s,
in
like
the
right
80s,
after the fall of Soviet Union.
I think during the 80s you couldn't do much about politics because we were under martial law until 1989, and now, but after that, the people were supposed to start engaging into more political work, and they didn't because they didn't care much about anything. They just cared about what's going on in television. But nowadays, that has changed a lot, and like youngsters are really much into politics, and we have like 5 probably MPs that are under 30.
Really?
Yeah. So like 26 or 27.
How is that possible?
Okay, that's because we had this big student uprising back in 2011 that had to do with better public education, good quality, and because our educational system is not very good.
Same here.
All right.
What do you mean by the? Sorry to interrupt you, but what do you mean by the public education is not up to the standard in terms of is it the standard or is it the financial? You guys have a financial problem from the government,
So what
or
the students
what was
were
the
fighting about? at that time?
problem the
cost
students actually
of
brought
student
the
rising.
issues?
That's another
So
question,
many
but
questions.
I think the answer is just one. All right. Well, our economical system is very liberal. All right, and that means that a lot of people is earning money out of a lot of things, and one of those things is education. So in Chile nowadays, you can earn money by having a school, right? And that means that sometimes your educational system isn't the best because you're privileging or putting in a privileged position your economical interests, right? Rather than your educational.
Actually, we will talk more about the political and economic movement and situation in Chile and also as the whole of Latin America a bit later. But let's focus on Smart Citizen Foundation, which you are the one moving it.
Okay.
So is it like a chapter within Latin America, or it has
it's just Chile that has been doing things, and our approach has been basically have partners in different parts of the world. Even in Malaysia, we have like the Sinar project is they are friends of us, and that's why I'm here.
So you have partners.
Yeah,
all over
we haven't partnered up with Sinar yet, but they are friends of us, so we can pretty much do some work with them as well.
And why do you think it's so important for young people to be involved in politics?
Why? Good question. I think. Well,
Gowri,
I
Because
think
most of their parents will try to protect them. And
I'm just trying to give you like a cognitive and logical question, because I think it is good and it feels awesome to go around and have all this conversation. But I think it is because it is a field that is a thing that feels change. Like if you go around the city and nobody cares about their neighbor and everything, that's pretty bad. And because I think I really don't have like a good answer to that, but I think it is because it feels awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you feel awesome?
I feel awesome.
Yeah, I feel awesome when I'm around people that cares about what the context is.
But it's also about the urgency of what they are saying. Everything is wrong about the country, because at the end of the day, the future generations are the one that are going to take out all the costs of whatever current political baggages that that is resulting out of the current political scenario. At Smart Citizen Foundation, like what kind of tools that you impart to young people?
We were working not long ago in a tool that was providing information about the Congress in Chile. We managed to get that tool working in Argentina as well. I would give you the names. I'm going to give you the names, all right? But they're very Spanish. One is Congreso Abierto, which is like Open Congress. So it's congresoabierto.cl. Okay. All right, it's hard to pronounce.
That's
the other
very
one,
sexy, I know.
Okay, and the other one is Congreso Interactivo .com.ar. That's an Argentinian version. So basically so it provides information about who's in Congress, who's representing you. You could also what the laws are, which are the laws currently in Congress.
But many times, you have all this information online. We have a website, a parliament website where it has all the information that you needed about what kind of issues were being debated, what were the consensus on that particular bill. But nobody actually cared to even read about it. So how do you, harness that curiosity?
I think that is a part that we haven't taken care much about. I think it's because Chilean society has been moving towards a more participatory group of people, that you don't really need to push that much into getting them to use the tool or any tool actually. Our Congress has that same tool as well, but we are providing some features that the government or the Congress would not be able to do. Like, for example, writing to your MP in a public way, for example, or commenting a bill. That is the sort of things that our Congress wouldn't allow citizens to do.
I see.
How transparent are all those information from it's provided online for youngsters to receive?
I think it, in my opinion, is pretty transparent. We, I think it's pretty transparent.
Because I believe transparency plays really important role when it comes to
She's from South Korea, by the way.
educate people, and then it's nothing to do with South Korea, by the way. I believe that when it comes to political system and the people's mindset that has to be crafted within the society, the transparency between the relationship, between the government and the public is very important.
Okay.
So.
Okay. I was asked this question a couple of days ago as well. How would you consider your government, like good or bad in terms of transparency? And I'd say that it is kind of good, but not perfect. There's still these gaps of corruption that are not included or are not highlighted by transparency. Like. A couple of weeks ago, I left Chile like about a month ago, traveling, and back then there was this big scandal about like corruption money going to candidates for election last year. All right, and that was pretty bad. I mean, and that sort of transparency we don't get. I mean, we still get corruption.
Let's go back in time and talk about Chilean history, because I think in order for us to understand where you're coming from, is good to understand how Latin America become the country that it is now. So in the past, the Chilean people elected a socialist government, which was toppled down and replaced by an authoritarian government, Pinochet.
Yep.
Maybe you can explain further how it happened.
Okay. This was back in 1970, and this was the first socialist president ever elected. This president was pushing a lot of laws against the elites, like for losing privileges.
And it nationalized a lot of the key industry.
Our key product, Chilean key product, is copper. Right, and he nationalized copper. That was a pretty strong move, I think. And back in the days, there was the Cold War going on, and a socialist president in Latin America could not be there, according to the CIA and the U.S. government. And so they decided to just throw him away. So that's how we got to a coup d'etat in '73. And we had a dictatorship and martial law for 17 years until 1989. And our dictator lost his power in a very funny way, because he thought that the people wanted him so badly that if he went to how do you call it, a referendum, he would win. So he decided to go on a referendum asking the people, do you want me to keep on being your president, or he would consider himself a president for the next 6 years, yes or no? And he lost. So we have a say in Chile that he ran a race alone and he lost. He got second. That's a very funny way of losing.
He lost to whom exactly?
No one.
No,
He
that's
just
being
basically-
sarcastic.
Yeah.
Really?
He was like a one-manship.
yeah. He was supposed to win that referendum, of course, but he lost. And
Since then, when he lost, that means you had an election to elect a new leader. Was it
that was a year after.
a year after?
That was a year after. Yeah.
So politically, it has changed a lot, meaning that you are no longer under martial law, no longer under an authoritarian government. The people somehow have the freedom to decide your own political and economic fate.
Yeah, but during those 17 years, Chilean one economical system and policy was rebuilt from scratch, basically. So we had a new constitution back in the 80s. That was under dictatorship, and economical system.
A lot of the constitution that you have now hasn't changed much since the martial law. And economically, during General Pinochet's era, he consulted the Chicago School of Economy on the kind of liberal economy model that you have now, and it hasn't changed much as well.
It
Has
hasn't.
it?
Yeah, it hasn't changed much. Actually, Chile was a laboratory for the Chicago boys to experiment on, and I think, like, if you compare like how liberal our economy is compared to the U.S., ours is much more liberal actually. So.
When you say much more liberal, could you like quantify in terms of policy?
I think I don't really know, but some of the results are, for example, like the 1% of the population in the US apparently owns like 70% of the wealth, and in Chile owns the 90% of the wealth. So that's how liberal it is. Yeah.
We will take a short break and discuss how liberal that it can be if no one is stopping it.
ASEAN Breakfast Call Dialogue, widening your horizons.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Gowri.
Hi, this is Grace.
And of course, we are with Felipe Álvarez. How are you again?
Still okay? You're fine?
Yeah.
So, off air, we have a bit of a discussion about
Inequality.
and other issues related to politics and economy, but just put a focus on Chile. Like right after the 2011 student movement, what kind of political self-determination that is happening right now within Chile?
All right. I think it put a lot of discussion into inequality. I think we were discussing inequality before, but we hadn't taken any like moves or decisions, or we didn't do much.
Is it sorry, to put things in perspective, is Chile one of the highest gap in equality in Latin America?
Yeah. If I want to quantize that, like for example, our Gini index is 0.5, which is really bad.
If you compare it to Malaysia, it's about the same number.
Yeah, it's Malaysian, according to 2009, is 0.46, which is like better than Chilean, but it's pretty bad as well.
So a lot of people are putting a focus on inequality, but I have to admit, in Malaysia, the topic on inequality is rarely being discussed.
Okay.
A lot when people talk about policies, they always talk about certain social policy or liberal policy, but they never talk about addressing inequality as a major problem on its own. In the case of your country? Because we see since the last 5 years, neighboring Latin American countries have their own uprising. We see Venezuela,
Brazil last year.
Bolivia, and all that. But when it comes to in Brazil also,
No.
but when it comes to Chile, has any effect by the kind of impact that you see around your neighbors?
Okay, this is a pretty good question because not today we are discussing in Congress our new educational law that would not allow anyone to get money out of education, which would get commercial interest out of education. But this is happening just now, right? And not just now, like 3 years after or 4 years after the students' revolution. But last week I was reading an article by some, I don't know who was it, but he was measuring how could you measure the success of a social movement that was related to the Taiwanese sunflower movement a couple of months ago. And he said, well, these movements cannot be necessarily measure their success by if they change any laws or any policies, because it is a much longer term sort of thing. I mean, did they create new social, we say in Spanish, social tissue, like in the sense that is people relating better now? Is people more empowered? And that sort of thing? And I would say yes. And that is something that I feel very proud of my country.
So when it comes to measuring how the success of a social movement, it's not just the change of policy or the change of government. It's also about the empowerment of society.
Yes.
And a lot of countries where they have, a lot of countries, they don't really focus, when it comes to movement to change the government, they don't really focus much on empowering society. Come back to Malaysia, because you are visiting here for a couple of days.
Yeah.
Do you see the same kind of situation is happening where young people are empowered, or you feel that there's still a lot of work needs to be done?
I think you still you're still on your way to have this empowerment among your citizens. This is my impression, at least.
What kind of question that usually were being raised with your interaction with the younger generation of Malaysians?
Well, the first couple of things are like, what do you think about politics? And they would say, we don't get much into it, which is a little like if I spoke about politics in Chile, or I would just raise a question, a lot of people would say, this is wrong or this is right.
They always take a stance, just like the Koreans. Sorry, I have to mention Koreans all the
but then I can actually relate to you because I did ask a few questions regarding the political system in Malaysia and so on, but not many people are aware, especially among youngsters. They just simply they don't care because this political system and government has been running under the same party over decades, and then they just expect the same thing will be done over for the next years. So they simply don't really know and also care about it.
I mean, and just to give a situation of a lot of the mindset of the people in this country, not necessarily younger generation, but in general, they have this mindset where the government will take care of them. So they have this comfort feeling where they don't need to care much. The government knows best. And the government also have the similar attitude towards society. That's why when it comes to certain policy, sometimes it's being done closed door. It's not being too transparent. And the reason would be like, we know better about it. So just let us handle it. That's the common sentiment. So in Chile, will people overreact to if the government say the same thing?
Yeah, people usually just doesn't. They listen to the government usually, and our president is very. She has a lot of. How do you say? A lot of people likes her. But,
Charisma.
She's very charismatic, and a lot of people likes her and everything. But I think that people doesn't let the government do what they want today, even though they judge a lot what the government is doing. People is very critic of what our government is doing. That has changed over the last 5 or 6 years.
But what about laws, maybe in terms of freedom of speech? Because like over here, a lot of times people want to speak out, but they're too afraid because of the existing laws that could go against
the
them.
Sedition Act.
So
Yeah, I've been told
Told.
about it. We don't get that. We
Okay.
are pretty free to speak pretty much everything. Yeah, we are pretty free to speak pretty much about everything. The thing is that a lot of people doesn't just pay attention to what you say, but that's another topic.
and how do they usually voice out when their dissatisfaction?
There's a lot of blogs. There's a lot of.
Are you allowed to do open protests on the street?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Like, well, the thing is that sometimes it isn't that as much as you say, but you have to ask your authority. Can I go and do protest? And
Does
they
it
would
always turn violent?
say, not necessarily, but there's this. Usually it does.
Okay.
Yeah, usually it does at the end of a protest go turn violent, especially because of the presence of extreme groups. Like,
Okay, a lot to learn from Hong Kong, all of us.
So the government actually pays attention when people write something in blogs, in the newspapers. They actually take it into consideration.
I think they do in a certain way, not much, but I think they do.
But it does have an effect.
Yeah, it doesn't have an effect. I don't know how big is it.
Okay.
I'd like to measure that in some way, but I get the impression that they do pay attention to what
Okay.
people is
So
thinking.
wait until he becomes an MP, then you ask him again. So
I'm not planning to be an anyway.
So I want to ask you about a question that Grace asked earlier, which is about the education policy. You mentioned that the education policy in your country is very much privatized, like
Yep.
almost probably 90% of your education system, and 50% of the students go to private schools.
Yeah.
What's the implication? Is it wrong? I mean, is it really that bad?
I think it is pretty bad because one, if you put the attention to to your economical priorities, you left behind good quality education as your priority, because you're more interested in earning money than in getting or giving your students good education. And that, at the end of the day, means that our education system isn't that good. Because our education system is pretty good in terms of getting money, not in terms of educating our kids.
Okay, let me use a capitalist argument on this.
Okay.
Although I'm not a capitalist, but a lot of them would say that the reason, the more privatized the schools, the more competitive schools become, and the quality that you will get for your students is better. Would that be the case in Chile?
I mean, I think it is not, because like pretty much every student has the same abilities and the like. But if you go to rich school, the students are not doing much better than the students.
That's
like
such an irony, right?
Yeah, it's such an irony. Yeah, they're not doing like using the international tests and that sort of stuff. They're not doing much better.
Because usually when you pay more, you expect to get a better quality of education.
Yeah, but they are not doing much better. And also, I think that like integration between rich kids or more advanced kids in terms of smarter kids or whatever you call them, and not that privileged kids, it's a good thing as well.
So you do believe in a public school where it's not controlled by private sector.
Yeah.
But it also shows that the kind of system that you still have in the country is very much controlled by the old money, where they want to control the larger pie of the Chileans' GDP. How strong is the old money or the elites in terms of their domination on your country's policy?
I think it is still pretty strong, but I think they are losing influence, especially in these hot topics, because nowadays a lot of people is speaking, and everyone has an opinion in this sort of thing. So I'd say that every time more and more they're losing the power. But I think it's still pretty bad.
In the situation of Malaysia, interestingly, people are very critical of the government, but they don't necessarily are critical of the top 2% of this country. They believe that a lot of the problems comes from the government and not so much of the elitist group. How do you usually change the mindset to make people realize that, hey, the people on top there are the ones controlling the economy and the political rights of the people?
Actually, that's the thing. Like, you have to think that the policies that for example, your authorities are taking are not necessarily related to public good. I mean, they could be very much influenced by these 2% of elites. And what has happened in Chile is we have had quite a few scandals that has changed the mindset of the people. Malaysians have this fixation with malls, shopping malls.
Yeah.
Chileans have this fixation with pharmacies. So if you go to Chile, I don't know why.
What?
I don't know.
Pharmacies?
Yeah, pharmacies. So if you go to Chile, in every single street, you'll find, like in every corner, you'll find a pharmacy. I don't know why.
But since when? Since how long has it been?
Is it because you don't have clinics?
I don't know, but probably 10 years or something.
Oh.
I see.
I don't know why it's happened, but
Is it because of the booming of the medical
probably.
industry?
Yeah.
But that's very interesting.
Yeah, probably. But the thing is that a couple of years ago there was this big scandal because there's 3 major chains of pharmacies in Chile, big ones, and they colluded themselves and they set the prices.
Oh.
And that was pretty bad because if you're real sick, you want to pay like the cost of the medicine, not really what they said the price is. And that was one of the first uprising, like people uprising against these elites that were setting up the prices of the medical.
I mean, in
supplies.
Malaysia, if you look at the top 10 billionaires, it's always the same people. It's always the same tycoons, and nobody is actually talking about them. But they are the ones that are closely linked with the current government.
I think, that's what has happened in Chile. Is basically we have had quite a few scandals. I think that's a thing that has changed our mindset. Also, because we, since the martial law, we had freedom of speech, but nobody really wanted to speak out much. But that has changed over, like, we hadn't had any martial law for 15 years. And a lot of kids, 25. I'm old. And a lot of kids were like in their 20s. They never saw what martial law was, so they are not scared of speaking out and say, "Hey, this is not fair."
So, Gowri, when you started to have this political awareness in Malaysia?
I guess when I went to university, because that's when the lecturers started telling us that you cannot be ignorant. Because we always have this perception that, the government is the government. We're never really going to know what's happening behind closed doors. But then it was the lecturers that actually said, no, you're university students. You have to start thinking. You have to be more critical. If the government is doing something that you're not happy about, you have the right to speak up. You have the right to let them know. So it was very much in university that I think that awareness started.
And Grace, I think you probably have gotten that awareness since the beginning.
Actually, it was from my parents. My parents are pretty vocal towards the political system in Korea, and then whenever it comes to any happenings or movements, they're heavily involved, and then they will be very opinionated towards the government.
So it's part of the Korean culture to be
it is a
vocal
culture,
against
yeah, and a
the
lot of
government.
people we are very scary people when it comes to certain movements, because we become violent as well as very vocal, because we believe that what we believe is correct, and then the government has to listen at the end of it, because the movement is very obvious, and then it's very evident in the society. So once they ignore our opinions, we'll become very viral on the online. So So we have this term called the netizens. So netizens are even scarier than the citizens in Korea. So
The reason I asked both of you because based on the experience that you have in Chile, I believe we can learn something. Malaysians can learn something about how we can be politically aware, since we don't really learn about democracy, about political rights in our education system. So if you want to share some of your experiences, how Southeast Asians, we can learn better from the kind of struggles that you have in Latin America.
I think, well, that's a pretty good question, and I don't have like a very good answer to that.
I'm not sure, do you have within your syllabus that, democracy is important and...
Democracy is important, but I don't really know what's a recipe for creating more awareness among your citizens. I think it is just a couple of events that had happened in our context that just trigger these politically awareness among us. It isn't something that someone did, or it's just in the air, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Is it part of the culture there as well, like what Grace said?
Yes, I guess probably it was before the martial law. There, it was like everyone was pretty critic, and everyone wanted to be involved in the government and decision making and everything, and they thought that they had to be taking into account. And then there was this martial law that.
So I believe your parents are very vocal.
Yeah, my dad at least. My dad is very vocal.
It's like, hey,
yeah.
you're not vocal?
Yeah.
Don't be my son.
Yeah.
Take a stand.
Take a position. That's it. But I think pretty much everyone is like that. Pretty much everyone feels like, hey, we should our government should be scared of us, not us with our government.
Does the government actually get scared, you think? Like,
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty much say we push them to do things. We push them to do things.
because or in Malaysia at least, it's always the case where the government feels like the people should not be too vocal or should not stand up too much, because that will kind of threaten the government and their position, and they want to maintain that status quo where they are. So but in the case of Chile, the people are so much vocal that the government in turn feels like, oh, okay, these people really know what they're talking about and they're clear about it, so we have to really do our job.
Just a question before we end the show. Like, if you don't have Pinochet, let's say you had a socialist government, what kind of Chile that would be right now?
I think we would have been in this part of being very politically aware and everyone taking culturally things in their hands a long time before that. I don't know.
It would probably be a different kind of idea of socialism, because when people refer to what a socialist government is, they always refer to the worst example, which is the Soviet Union.
Yeah. This our socialist president was a very different one. Actually, he was seen by the Soviet Union as a soft socialist because he was elected. He didn't get there with force or an army, that sort of stuff.
So any message to young Southeast Asian before we end the show?
Be aware of your context. I think you can change the world.
Okay,
If you decide, you can change the world.
And come to Chile. You have nice beaches.
We have nice mountains and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and sightseeing.